Hey, y'all, and thank you so much for tuning back into another segment here on GEMS podcast. With me today in the hot seat is Ryan Lindner, and here's a bit about Ryan, y'all. So, Ryan has been in business for quite some time. And if I were to tell you all of his subject matter expertise and topics, it will blow your mind. But today we're going to keep it concise. So here's a bit about Ryan. He is a personal development specialist who has worked as a behavioral coach for clients and top organizations all over the world. After two sudden, unexplained cardiac arrests at a young age, he began to explore different perspectives with clients that come with any profound life changing event. If you aren't living, you're dying. It wasn't uncommon for Ryan to teeter on unconsciousness, even at times while working with a client, requiring him to prioritize his own energy and time masterfully, and assisting clients to do the same. Ryan has conducted thousands of coaching sessions, has led operations for a major leadership and organizational change company, and manages learning and development projects for companies to reshape their customer experience. And we all know that if your customers are happy, that's also going to bring you more customers because they're going to refer you. And today we're going to spend some time talking about onboarding 101 for all organizations. But without further ado, please welcome Ryan Lindner.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
My pleasure, Ryan. And before we dive into your subject matter expertise, I want to give the audience a chance to get to know you in a fun and personal way. And since you have done your due diligence, I'm sure you know what's next, right?
I know it.
So we're going to do either a icebreaker or a rapid fire 10 question game. What are you in the mood for?
Let's do a rapid fire game.
Okay, it's rapid fire for a reason. So, question number one, if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Healing like Wolverine.
Question two, if you could trade places with anyone, who would it be?
No one. No one.
Question three, are you an Apple or Android user or perhaps hybrid like myself?
I would say Android.
Oh, okay. A lot of people have been saying Apple. Question four, if you could have lunch or dinner with any person, past or present, who would it be?
My dad.
Yep, another winner there. Same here. Five, if you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, Ryan, what would it be?
Own who you are and don't compare yourself to other people.
Question six, favorite movie or book?
I like the movie The Illusionist with Edward Norton.
Question seven, name one regret that you have.
None, because I have learned, and I don't think I'd be where I am without going through that learning.
Eight, if you could recreate any significant moment in your life, what would it be and why?
I think it's one moment that I'll miss when I leave this place, and there's this little place that I go on a bike ride to down near the pond, and I'm just at peace there. I'd go there as often as possible.
Nine, what is your favorite music genre?
Actually, all I do listen. If you listen to my playlist, it's all genres really. I don't gravitate towards one over the other.
And 10, it's our pass or play question. Here are the rules. If you pass, our rules are reversed and you get to ask me a question. If you play, I ask you one last question. So, do you want to pass or play?
I'll play.
Okie dokie. You just won an all expense paid getaway. Here's the kicker though. You're not able to fly back to your home base for quite some time. So where are you heading?
This is an odd answer. I'm going to go to Greenland for a little while because no, who else is saying that? No one. I'm going to explore
Amazing.
it.
And thank you for playing Rapid Fire with Genesis. Now we're going to segue into the subject matter expertise, which is you talking about onboarding 101 for organizations. But before we dive in, it's so important that we lay the foundation for our audience and let them know exactly what is onboarding. And then we're going to walk through why onboarding is important for an organization to do it successfully so they could retain their employees.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think they know what onboarding is. One thing I did as a coach for many years is I tracked turnover at companies. So, really looking into, why people stay, why people leave. Was there a cultural component to that? I've been a part of, retraining a lot of managers, leaders, HR, and so forth. And there is a very big difference between leadership and management. And if I had to, of all the thousands of clients I've had, and then working with organizations, if I had to drill it down to one thing, it was you see higher turnover at organizations that treat people like their roles, not people. And I think and no bad leader thinks it's them, right? They're always, no one's like, oh, is it me or is it, a lot of bad leaders that I've seen, it's easy for them to look at other reasons why people are leaving. So I think to make that shift, and this is really critical in onboarding, keeping in mind, you want to treat people like people and not roles, is you have to imagine it from the experience of a new learner. So a lot of organizations, if they have individuals that have been there 10 years, 20 years, they forget what the experience is like to someone who's new. And I feel like when someone's new in an organization, and I think back all the organizations I've worked at, I feel like a kindergartner on his first day of school, and you're just trying to learn where the bathroom is. And you're trying to, where do I sit? And, a lot of times it can feel like drinking from a fire hose. So, it can be scary. And, you don't know anyone, you're learning processes, you're learning people, and when you don't have an onboarding system, you do feel like that little kind of lost kindergartner, um, and if you don't feel supported by your leadership, your management, over time, you feel like you're not heard. You feel like no one's checking on you, no one cares about you. So when I make recommendations to companies, it's always keeping those things in mind. It's always keeping in mind, people, not roles. It's good to have some sort of structured onboarding. Now, if you're a small company, you probably don't have, a learning management system, videos. You probably don't have it like that, but you want this person to be, they want to feel heard. So you want to have a regular cadence with them. Uh, you want to ask a lot of questions and be open to what they have to say. And where I've seen companies go wrong, it's just an aimless process. The person is sort of, just thrown in there, thrown to the wolves, and they've got to figure it out as they go. And over
Yeah,
time, they become disengaged over time.
absolutely. So I'm going to chime in there, Ryan, because I came from an area where I spent 15 years in corporate, 12 in oil and gas and energy. And I think documentation is also very critical whenever you're going through the onboarding processes. Make sure that employee is familiar with the policies and procedures. Did that employee get a an employee handbook? Do they have a buddy, somebody that has been with the company for quite some time, but also in the same scope of work that they could guide them through, showing them how to effectively use the systems and the processes, whether it's the LMS, which is the learning management system. Harvard Manage Mentor is another one that we've used, or some of the CBTs, which are computer-based trainings, and then also give them the ability to ask questions or maybe challenge the status quo. Because whenever you do have a new employee that's coming in from the outside, they may see a way to improve your processes, and not that they necessarily want to change it, but they're just curious to say, okay, why is it done this way? Is this really the best way to conduct this work and so forth? I think that's something to be mindful as well with onboarding. And then whenever that individual is successfully onboard, they feel like they're set up for success versus being thrown into the wolves.
You're absolutely right. And the good companies out there, they'll, if they don't have something formal like that, where it's like a learning management system or something like that, they still, there's things they can do. And one of those, is you mentioned, is sort of like a shadowing type of situation, because you can only learn so much by like going through a PowerPoint, or yeah, sometimes you have to learn by seeing what kind of a day in the life of seeing the actual job being done. Um, and I think shadowing is super important. Having a coaching program, I think, is important. And that doesn't have to be anything crazy. If you're a small company, it can just be a once a week cadence with your manager. And you also mentioned, I think when people come in, it's always astounding to me when someone new who's really skilled comes in a company. No one asks them anything. No one tries to utilize their expertise. And I've seen it happen many times, because you come in an organization, you want to fit in, and no one bothers to ask you about any of the skills that you bring with you to make things better. So I totally agree with you. I think the best leaders, they know how to, they're really not just task oriented, but they're really all about the shadowing, the coaching. And I have found the best leaders are open. So it's not about getting it perfect. It's about, asking questions, and for example, if someone's new, you're new here. What's your experience been like? Is there anything I can do to support you? I see you have a ton of expertise here. Is there anything that you can see to improve our process? So I think the openness and asking the right questions is critical too. And I think just those three things there are far and away more than a lot of companies. Because most of the time, again, it's so task oriented that people just start and they're just kind of, thrown to the wolves.
Absolutely. And I like the fact that you mentioned asking questions, because that's so important. Seeing what that person's background is, because they may bring a lot of knowledge to the table, but if no one asks them what their background is, you may not know how to best utilize their skills and capabilities to the advantage of them, but also to the advantage of the corporation. And then another thing that I would say is ERG, so employee resource groups. Those are really good, that whenever a new employee is coming into the organization, if your company is a mid to large size, have an ERG where that individual could go and assimilate themselves with other people outside of their direct group. That way they could, network. I think that's a big part of onboarding too, is that networking capability, because it's not always about what you know. Sometimes it's about who you know and how y'all could best, feed off of one another as far as skill sets goes. And so whenever you think about onboarding, let's work it from a small company to a mid to large size company. What are some of the variations that you see, Ryan? And how can you lay the foundation to help anyone who is listening to this recording?
Yeah, I think there's two key distinctions working with some of the larger companies versus the smaller ones. The larger ones, is easy to feel swallowed up. You're a number, right? And there are a lot of people in the company who are never going to know your name. And, I worked for some really large companies, and you just kind of feel lost in there. And that's why it's all the more important for leadership to really be very self-aware. I think self-awareness is something you can't always, not always teach. It's a trait, right? With the smaller companies, you might get some more of that attention. They'll know your name, but I find that they lack more process, and they are very, let's wake up today and figure it out and see what goes, and there's no, it's a little bit more random with the small companies, and they don't have as much infrastructure there. They don't have the formal like LMS systems and things like that. But I think, we've all heard the saying, people don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad bosses. I think they leave bad situations, really. And I think making it a better culture, it starts with onboarding, but it's really about engaging people and allowing them to feel heard. And right now, only about 34% of people are actively engaged at work. And that number drops to about 2% when employees do not feel supported by their leadership. So again, I think the leadership support, as leaders determine culture, right, in their companies, even if it's just a little segment of the company. So yeah, really important to keep that in mind. But I think those two key distinctions with large companies versus small, I think it's just a matter of the resources they have available. And but there's always something you can do.
Thank you for sharing that. And then what are some of the pros and cons of a great onboarding? Because right now, I'm sure you heard the buzz, which is we're in the great resignation. Do you think the product of the pandemic, how an employee feels they're being treated versus, them being seen and heard versus onboarding can all play a factor into this great resignation? Or what are your viewpoints?
I think when people resign, and yeah, every now and again you resign because some amazing opportunity came down the pathway, but I always say to leaders, there should be very few surprises when someone leaves. There should be very few surprises, because you should have that kind of a relationship with your employees to where you understand, and you should have that regular communication. Now, if you haven't created a culture like that, there are going to be surprises. And I think the onboarding is a great time and a great way to introduce them to the culture of the company. And again, if you're thinking of it from a new learner or a new employee's perspective, when you come into a company and they don't greet you properly, you're meeting random people, but hi, here's Johnny, I'm introducing you to Johnny. Okay, that doesn't mean anything for me because I have no idea what Johnny does. How will I work with Johnny? So I think it's the way you have to understand what their experience is going to be like. They have to be introduced to people, know what those people do, how are they going to work with them, give them a little bit of structure, and kind of guide them through it. Because again, you are bringing in someone that is going to contribute to that culture. And I think when you set a precedent, good or bad, that's what it becomes. If you start someone off on the right foot, it's going to contribute positively to the culture. If they come in and anything goes and there's no real formal, they're not greeted well to the company or integrated well to the company, they're going to remember that. And eventually they're going to leave.
Yeah. So it's like start off on a high positive note, set the precedence high, aim high, and set the bar high, and make that individual feel like they matter and they are becoming an asset to the corporation, they're adding value, and vice versa. The company is also adding value back to that employee, whether it's company benefits, different perks that the company offer, or just a conducive environment where that individual can feel like they are surviving and not just thriving. Or it could be a little bit of both, thriving and surviving. And now, on the flip end, as we begin to wind down, Ryan, what do you think about the opposite, exit strategies and exit planning, whenever that employee says, okay, it's a great organization, but another opportunity came up that I just can't pass up on? And that may be more money, that may be spending more time with their family. So they're working at another company that has more workplace flexibility where they could work from home or etc. Yes, we know it's important to onboard, but I also think it's important to offboard and really have a exit interview to understand, because feedback is a gift and you can take that feedback and build it into the front end, which is onboarding.
Yeah, I think exit interviews are critical. And I don't think enough companies do them. And that's a great, because when people are leaving and they put their notice in, they have nothing to lose anymore, right? So they're going to be honest, right? They're going to tell you exactly what the experience was like. Now, if you're the employee, you always want to leave on the right foot as well. You want to, for reference purposes, and if you had a good relationship, I think just being just honest, and helping to position that company and perhaps even your replacement, leave your role and your work in good hands, and help them, and that's the right way to leave. And that way, you have that great reference, and you never know when it's about relationships, right? You never know when that relationship is going to be helpful down the road. So I think that's key there. It's all relationships. But again, it comes to the culture there again. And I think in summary, I think the most critical piece is relationships and the ability to empathize. And if I think back at all the great and not great leaders that I've encountered, the ones that stand out, even though they weren't perfect, the ones that stand out in a good way, are the ones that could empathize. And I could say, hey, look, this came up, or I could be honest, they were approachable. I think it comes down to the empathy and the listening skills and things like that. And the bad ones, same thing, but the opposite. They would talk at you, right? And you always felt like you were never understood. And when I look at companies across industries, that is exactly what I see when you see mass exodus, when people are leaving companies. It's always the same, And you're right. Every now and again, they're going to leave for a good reason. Maybe they just found a better opportunity. And you know what? Fair enough. But you always want to leave on a high note, and maintain those relationships.
Absolutely. As my Caribbean mother would say, never dam the bridge you cross. So don't burn those bridges or those relationships, because you never know how you're going to run across that person again, or how your paths may cross, and definitely for those referrals if needed. And so, Ryan, is there anything else that I did not ask you that you would like to interject in this conversation before we jump into the CTA, the call to action?
I would say culture is key. And again, if one word for anyone to remember that makes a great leader, I like the word empathy. Again, people, not roles. And if people feel heard, they will oftentimes surprise you, and they will stick around even though there's some road bumps. They will stick around through that. It's when and statistics show, when they don't feel supported, that's when they leave.
Super, super true, because I have been there where I would pull up in the parking garage and I felt like there was a pit just down in my stomach. My eyes would roll. I just felt like, oh my gosh, I have a headache. And it was because my fuse was getting short and I knew it wasn't a place I wanted to be, but I stayed because the money was so good. But sometimes God, the universe, or whoever you believe in will shut that door when you are being too stubborn to make a move on your own. And that's exactly what happened to me. So then
Absolutely.
so let's jump into the call to action, Ryan. What is your call to action for our audience today? If they don't remember anything else, what is that staple or that challenge you want to spark inside of them so they can bust a move?
I would say know your why. In other words, if you're going to stay in a role, why are you staying? What are the right reasons? I'm not going to define that for you. What are the right reasons? Why are they the right reasons? Why are they not? If you're thinking of leaving a job, why? Understand why that is. Is it because the grass is greener on the other side of the fence? Or is it because you're expecting a perfect position to be waiting for you? But I think all that is easier to navigate if uh, I think looking for a very, you're right, money isn't everything. Um, and I think finding a company with a very great culture and a great onboarding system, um, that's hard to find, in my opinion. That's hard to find. So, be grateful for it, but again, know your why, and listen to your gut.
And Ryan, how can our audience connect with you via your website and where do you primarily hang out on social media?
Sure. They can check out my website at rslindner.com, Lindner, rslindner.com. I've got my social media links on there, LinkedIn, for example. They can also go to my book's website, which is halfknownlifebook.com, which is also on Amazon.
Yes, yes, yes. I was over here on mute, smiling and talking to myself, y'all. So I am super excited that you came on the platform today, Ryan, to share your expertise with onboarding one-on-one for organizations, no matter what size they are. I want to thank you for the value that you added to the audience because I think anyone can use this, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an employee that is still working, but you're building your business on the side, AKA that side hustle or whatever. These are some tips that everyone can use no matter what level you're in or what your socioeconomic status is. And I tell people knowledge is power. All of Ryan's contact information will be in the show notes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We can be found on 40 plus platforms. We're also ranked in the top 2% globally. As of this morning, the ranking has increased per www.listennotes.com, and that's out of 2.8 million podcasts. So 2% globally out of 2.8 million. And for those of you interested in seeing the video to this, we are on YouTube at Gems with Genesis. Amaris Kemp is the YouTube channel. And until we chat next time, peace, love, and lots of blessings. Have yourself an amazing day.